Hello, everybody. How's it going out there? Good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world. Good to see you. Glad you're here. I'm Andrew Esquire. This is a Legal Mindset where we help you be your own judge. I am super excited today because we have a guest, a superstar lawyer from down under. I'm going to waste no time on this one because we've all been covering this, pretty much nonstop. We all need some extra sleep. We all need coffee. We all need to get going here. And yeah, we're going to just jump right into this about the verdict, about a potential appeal in the Depp versus Heard case, and about perjury. Yes, perjury, the thing you've all been waiting for. And without further ado, let me introduce my guest, Jalan Kalantar. Jalan, how's it going? Or Jahan?
Good morning, man. I'm good. Good to see you. Nice to meet you, Andrew.
Pleasure. Listen, when I went to ask my Australian viewers, I said, listen, I want to get somebody who's in Australia, who's a lawyer, who's been covering this, who knows what's up. Because I, as an American attorney who's abroad, I was trying to stream at times that pick up New Zealand, Australia, the EU, not just US trial times. And everybody, I had several recommendations to call you, to contact you. So I was very, very glad that you were able to stop by for this, Jahan.
I'm touched and I'm honored, and hopefully I can give some value.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you tell the people, my audience who may not know you, a little bit about yourself? And guys, Jahan's social, all his links are in my description, so you can click there and get all of his information.
So, Andrew, I am a lawyer here in Sydney. I'm a litigator. I specialize in high conflict situations. So we have a pretty unique practice, 3 major areas: crime, family, and commercial disputes. Before that, I practiced at the private bar. So in Australia, we have a split profession of solicitors and barristers. Barristers specialize in courtroom advocacy, and I did that for about, I want to say, 5 years. During that time, I did a number of matters, including defamation. So I've run some defamation matters from woe to go. And yeah, I specialize in courtroom disputes, things that are not going to be resolved between the parties and largely are going to go to a adjudicator.
Yeah. So, I mean, sounds very similar. So the Australian system sounds very similar to the UK system. I have a little bit of knowledge of that, but it sounds like the solicitor barrister divide is pretty similar.
It's exactly the same. So because we're a common law system that inherited our system from the UK, so we do have a split profession. It's not uncommon for there to be solicitor advocates, which is what I am. So I sometimes do higher end trials, but appeal work, particularly high order appeals, are generally done by barristers, or we call them counsel.
Mm-hmm. So why did you start covering the Depp versus Heard case? And can you give me some of your thoughts on it? I know that's a huge question, but we just got to get right into it, Jahan.
So look, it's really funny. I've been plodding along on TikTok since about July last year when I started. Over here in Australia, we had several really substantial lockdowns because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so when those lockdowns were occurring, I was going crazy. I was alone at the firm. Usually I have a fairly large team, and I love to talk about the law. I'm one of those annoying types. And you pick up my energy, which I can just talk about the law all day. So took out my camera phone, started talking about the law, and it took off, which was really crazy and really cool. So once that took off and it started to get to the stage where it was like becoming something, I just commented on Australian law. And I don't even know why I mentioned it. A friend of mine said, hey, this Amber Heard Johnny Depp thing, this is pretty cool. Check it out. And I made a video basically giving an opinion, I think, on one of the witnesses and just looking at it from a legal lens. And it got picked up and people started, wanting the content. And, the beast feeds itself.
Yes, that's true.
I found myself, and as a content creator and somebody who, law is my full-time job, content creation sort of my hobby. You love it when you find this deep vein of information that you can mine and gives you like content. Cause I'm on TikTok and you need 6-7 ideas a day. So finally there was this thing that had like 1,000 ideas spewing out of it every day. So I just kept making more content about it. And before you know it, I kind of became an expert on the subject matter at hand. And to that extent, I read the Virginia Rules of Evidence. I read through several articles by defamation lawyers in Virginia. I looked at the bench book, spoke to other lawyers over in the US to really try to understand it. Because while defamation's similar, the US has its own flavor. Yeah, you guys do things bigger.
And even different states do things differently, right? Because the whole point is that if he had brought this claim, if Johnny Depp had brought this claim in California, he probably would have not prevailed. Like, he probably would have not gone ahead and prevailed if he brought this in a different state. Virginia was a very specific venue for a very specific reason, and it allowed him to get over some thresholds, specifically some SLAPP thresholds, which is strategic lawsuits against public participation. There's certain laws that prevent defamation lawsuits, right? They kind of set as an initial barrier. So that would have stopped them in California, but not in Virginia. So this is a very unique case, and of course, it had a very unique cast of characters.
Just the venue that was selected being Virginia is a sign of genius courtcraft. Because think about it, 2 Californian actors arguing about an op-ed in the Washington Post. Why on earth did they end up in Virginia? Well, because one, in Virginia, you're right, there's no SLAPP lawsuits. The protection against SLAPP is gone. And a SLAPP is just a fancy way of saying you sue people to shut them up. Yes. And really, that's the fancy way of saying it. It's a little bit more legalese to that, but that's a pretty high level estimate. And in Virginia, they can televise lawsuits. And not only that, they can televise them and put the exhibits online. So that's a really powerful thing for commentators such as ourselves to sort of access it and have a bit of a play with the exhibits, look at them, see what the jury's seeing in real time, access those exhibit lists. And the other thing that's brilliant is how Johnny Depp's legal team came up with the fact that, oh, wait, Washington Post has its Virginias and its servers in Virginia. That gives us grounds. I mean, it's a legal fiction and a legal nonsense, but a brilliant one. And it got them into the right forum.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think they needed that forum. And by the way, I think that forum worked out so well for them. Especially, what do you think about the Judge Ascanante? I think she was a fantastic judge on this. I mean, I've watched a lot of court cases, and I started my channel much like you during COVID when I was bored. And I'm always glad to hear when people use that time when they were locked down to do something productive, to do something they loved, to not be negative about it, to find something positive out of that tough time in their lives. So I'm glad to hear that from you. But I've been watching court cases, and I've seen a lot of shitty judges. Judge Ascanante was pretty good in my opinion, but I want to get your opinion, especially with a foreign eye.
What a phenomenal judge. This had it was a circus. It was always going to be a circus. But right. Those stipulations around timings, those stipulations around the way that the trial would be conducted, the keen attention to every single objection, the listening with sidebars, the prevention of it exploding out. I think Judge Ascanante was an exceptional judicial officer. Really the highest of respect to her, the way she conducted that case and dealt with incredibly complex subject matter.
Yeah. Could be in Australia, could you get away with timing clocks like that? Is that something that you've seen or that's permitted, to have the sides timed so strictly?
No, not strictly speaking. I mean, we have evidentiary rules here in Australia, and one of the major things is the court can avail itself of evidence how it sees fit. So there's an ultimate discretion afforded under our Evidence Act as to how a court will take in the evidence that it takes. I've not seen it like that, but remember, we rarely will have litigation of the scope and magnitude of a case like this. I mean, it's very rare for. I mean, it's not rare at all for powerful people to sue each other. That happens day in and day out. That's like drinking water. It's very, very rare for it to get to a courthouse and be adjudicated. And it's even rarer for it to be televised. And that's what gave this all of the magical formula.
And yeah, that's the key there, right? That's the key there, is that many people, for example, have said, hey, Andrew, I want to be a lawyer. I want to go to the court. And even in the United States, the fact of the matter is 99.99% of cases that are filed are settled. They don't go to court. As I was representing a lot of large corporations, Universal, for example, I represented them. And most of the cases that we had brought against us were settled. They were settled very, very quickly. There was not a trial that came from that. No high profile. And certainly most of the cases were not televised. Now, certainly, I think, what do you think about the effect of television here? Because a lot of people have said, okay, this is an American thing. You guys make a spectacle of the courtroom. But then there's some counter arguments. The counter arguments being that if this wasn't televised, I think the narrative might have been much different. In fact, I've seen a lot of media, which was pro-Amber, kind of have to flip over because, well, people were just seeing things and realizing, hey, these witnesses are completely not credible for Amber Heard. These experts are looking a little suspect. Maybe Johnny's side is looking a little bit better. But what do you think about television?
It is. I think we've witnessed the birth of something that is going to change the dynamic forever. It's like the first time you saw an iPhone and you were like, wow, That's not something that happens every day. That's different. That's unique. That's cool. I think it was profound in the sense that I would be watching the trial, and then somebody would say something like, "My dog stepped on a bee," and literally within like 3 minutes, there'd be memes about my dog stepping on a bee. Like TikToks would be shooting out, and all this crazy stuff would be happening, and you're just like, "Wow, it happens in real time." It's this intersection of everyone having an opinion plus this really serious thing playing out, and that interplay, which I'd never seen before. It is. I think we're witnessing the change in the zeitgeist. I really do.
Yeah. And I think that now that we've had this, now that we've seen this trial and seen how successful it is, I mean, it's kind of a recipe for future trials. I mean, it shows how big this can be in terms of a news item. And this was all consuming. And now, of course, look, not everybody is Johnny Depp, right? A lot of people say, okay, the next case will be Marilyn Manson versus Evan Rachel Wood. That's one that's coming down the line. Very similar fact patterns. But, as much as you may like or dislike Marilyn Manson is no Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp is the number 3 highest earning actor in the world. So I think we have to admit, and I think you probably would agree with me, that Johnny Depp's star power had a large effect on how big this case was.
Absolutely. And here's a prediction for you. Now that he's no longer persona non grata, his next role in Hollywood will be one of the highest paid roles of all time.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the fact that the fans are willing to come out and support him, that's been seen, that's been verified, that's even in the court when they were talking about metadata and showing justice for Johnny and how that was by far the outlier. That's the love and support that Johnny Depp has. And that those people are going to show up and purchase things. And particularly when you were talking about sliding into maybe a recession here, or economic doldrums, you want to focus on winners and things that are going to make money. And Johnny Depp seems to me from this court case like he can make some money.
I guarantee you there are some interns right now looking for alpacas and trying to get 1,000 alpacas so that maybe they can lure him back for pirates. Honestly, it's profound, the shift in sentiment in only 7 weeks.
Yes. It's insane. I mean, he's gone from, persona, like I said, persona non grata to now the rock star. I mean, he's back to his, kind of rock star phase now.
He's literally rocking out, with Jeff Beck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I heard that Kate Moss came and visited him backstage at a concert the other day, which is pretty awesome.
Talk about landing on your feet, man. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, it's crazy. So, what did you think, to talk a little bit about the case, because I want to get your legal perspective? What did you think about the experts? Because I think one of the things in this case that was just, to me, so jarring was the experts. But I want to get your opinion on the expert witnesses.
I think that the expert witnesses were night and day. I think the most compelling witness by far was Dr. Curry.
Yes.
I think Dr. Curry was the most put together, articulate, well-spoken, non-aggressive, yet assertive witness I've seen in the box. I was so impressed by her testimony and her rebuttal testimony. I think that the other one that really blew me away, which kind of flew under the radar, was the expert that calculated damages for Johnny Depp using Q scores and the Google Analytics. He made that really cool. I think you guys call them demonstratives.
Yeah, demonstratives.
Yeah. So we call them aid memoirs. So same thing, different name.
I just learned something.
I'm here to help. But the demonstrative was quite cool in that you could look at it and be like, oh yeah, cool. So this allegations made this drop happen. This allegations made this happen. And so I thought those two were fantastic experts. And I want to compare and contrast that with the experts that Amber called, who quite frankly were in my opinion, not able to get the message across the line. Being kind, they weren't able to connect with the jury.
Right. They were kind of detached from the jury in a way. In that sense. Now, which would you say would be the worst witness, or maybe the top two? Because you gave top two, so how about you give two of the worst witnesses on Amber's side? Because I mean, you got to have best and worst. There's a balance in life.
I don't think you should say worst, but I think the witness that, in my opinion, did not assist the case whatsoever and maybe was adverse to misheard would be Dr. Spiegel.
I knew you were...
And I don't want to be critical of him. He's clearly a competent psychiatrist. He's clearly board certified. He has a lot of credentials behind him. You can be an exceptional expert and not be good on the stand. But that was one of the most bizarre performances I've ever seen in the witness box. It really, I really think that as a jury member, it would have lost me. I would have completely lost faith in the case that was being brought by the individual that was pushing that.
Yeah, I think his demeanor, his facial expressions, his responses, the evasiveness, also the answer to the ethical question, which I've never had a witness or seen a witness on the stand give a doctor, right, who is giving medical testimony, turn around and give a legal definition on expert testimony and make what essentially was an appellate argument on why we shouldn't repeal this Goldwater rule. It was the oddest thing I've ever seen in my life.
It honestly, I mean, I've interviewed in my capacity as an advocate in trial, in hearing, in sentence, in motions. I would probably, because I do a lot of mental health advocacy type work,
Right.
I probably cross-examine, I want to say 200 plus psychiatrists specifically.
Right.
I've never seen one give testimony, even the most basic registrar who is still learning his craft. I've never seen one give testimony so bizarre. I really haven't. Like I've not
very odd. Yeah, and did you take anything away from the witnesses testifying on damages for Heard, right? Specifically, perhaps Catherine Arnold, right? And her knowledge, her lack of knowledge of the industry. I mean, did you kind of find anything about that interesting? Because to me, I think there's a point at which the judge could have thrown out those counterclaims, right, for pretty much not meeting a basic evidentiary burden. But I just want to get your thoughts, especially particularly to damages on Amber's side.
Look, I think that was one of the most, that testimony, I think, while delivered properly, was nonsense. I mean, how can you possibly equate the fact that you have secured a role in one Aquaman as an ancillary romantic lead as the same as what's happened in Jason Momoa's career? It just is nonsensical. They're not the same. And I think it was Johnny Depp's witness who was the Hollywood agent. I forget his name, but the guy who actually looked like an agent. He gave big agent energy.
Richard Marks. He was an entertainment lawyer. He's well known. And I actually was on a show yesterday with somebody who works on scripts in Hollywood, and he confirmed that Richard Marks is a known person, is known in Hollywood. Nobody knows who Catherine Arnold is. She's a nobody.
Look, I actually think that even just having seen him and watched his testimony for a brief period of time, I had absolute confidence in what he was saying. And he's right. The way that he explained the deals in Hollywood and how they work, the negotiations, how the back end works, so to speak, the terms of the deal and the relationship between the actor, the deal, the franchise, it was very clear and compelling. And I made an assertion fairly early on because I really... In Australia, you can't assert unliquidated damages without some basis, right? So when they said 100 million, I said, that's nonsense. There's got to be a reason. I was trying to look through the pleadings and find out where you guys got 100 million from. Because in my jurisdiction, you have to justify things.
Right.
Couldn't find it. And then in closing, when counsel for Ms. Heard says, he said 50, so we said 100. I was like, well, that is the stupidest reason I've ever heard to seek a damages. It was insane.
It's not a basis. You can't just say they asked for this, so I want double. Like, that's not a basis for damages.
It's completely like I would potentially get sanctioned by my regulator if I did that. You know, when I sign off on a lawsuit, I have to sign a certificate that says there's reasonable prospects of success. It's just crazy that you can just say, he wants 50, I want 100. No basis whatsoever in reality.
Yeah. That by the way, that right there, no basis in reality, stands for a lot of Amber Heard's case. Right. I mean, a lot of that case. What did you think about the character witnesses? I mean, obviously we have Johnny and Amber. We can talk about their testimony in a second, but just generally, Whitney, Raquel Pennington, Io, some of the character witnesses on Amber's side. Do you think they help or kind of hurt? Because the one thing I pulled out of it, at least personally, was that the stories didn't line up. But I just wanted to see if you thought differently.
Well, Miss Vasquez, who was, can I just say, she's going to be a celebrity in her own right.
She's going to be a partner. She was an associate. She better be a partner tomorrow at her law firm.
I think that I think when they commenced that case, there was no position that she would be doing closing, and now there's no. Yeah, she'll be offered partnership. I'd be surprised if the table hasn't already got that agreement on it, or she hasn't been poached by some other magic circle firm. But she said it best when she goes, "This is a woman who burns bridges. The only person who came for her is her sister. Her best friend, who she confided everything in, wasn't there to give testimony contemporaneously because there's been this push." And it goes to the case theory that Dr. Curry articulated, that this is a person with high emotional lability who pushes people close and then pulls them away, and then pushes them close and pulls them away. And it lined up with the evidence. I actually think that a lot of criticism towards Ms. Heard is unjustified and unkind. I think she actually believes what she's saying. I don't know if there's a basis in reality for it, but I believe as she perceives the world, I think she actually believes what she's saying.
I think at least some of it, right? I mean, it seems like she does believe at least some of it. I think that there does seem to be, based on Dr. Curry's diagnosis. I mean, there's obviously a lot of projection, mimicking. There's other behaviors that are going on. But when you have those personality types, specifically BPD and HPD, her outbursts, her behavior is often explained by those disorders. So I can definitely see that. Okay, so Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. I guess let's start with Johnny Depp, because one of the things that was most shocking to me was his decision to get back on the stand. I think that to me, I think the second round didn't go as well as the first did. However, I wanted to get your opinion on what, on the balance, do you think Johnny Depp, particularly when he came back, do you think he helped or hurt his case? Do you think it was consistent? How do you think that boiled out?
I think the rebuttal of Johnny Depp the second time round was of limited value and potentially hurt his case. I think that I think it hurt his case, not because he wasn't a particularly good witness, but he did such a good job the first time he was on the stand. He did such a good job. He was engaging, he was articulate, and he was likable. Even his banter with opposing counsel was likable. And the jury liked him. They saw him in a deeply human light. When he got back on the stand, he was nowhere near as likable. He was nowhere near as sharp, and the points weren't as clear. And so I think the second time was not a particularly good forensic decision. He won anyway, but I didn't think it added anything to it for the second time.
Right. I agree with that. I think he won despite that testimony, not because of it. Amber Heard, on the other hand, Amber getting on the stand, Vasquez, and like you said, she was the shining star of this. I think that first cross-examination woke everybody up. We had been in kind of a doldrums. We'd been kind of asleep, but that was just a shot of adrenaline, that first cross of Camille Vasquez and Amber Heard. But as a whole, particularly with the rebuttal testimony of Amber Heard, do you felt like that might have been the nail on the coffin that kind of sealed the jury's deal?
I think that even if, so, I mean, I would, because I remember it clearly. It was like 5:30 a.m. Sydney time when that cross-examination. He wears chunky rings. He loves to wear chunky rings. Classic closing the gate, Irving Younger cross-examination tactic, leading the person down a pathway, opening the gate, shutting the gate. Of course, if you say he always wears chunky rings and you allege that he's viciously and savagely assaulted your face, there'd be something there. So I remember that grabbed me. The second cross-examination was just as good, but the reality is that Ms. Heard by then had clearly searched the internet, and she was trying to come back and win public sympathy. The things she was saying, even in relation to, commentary, it's clear that she'd been just consuming content that showcased her as the villain, and she was trying to win back the public eye, not realizing the horse is truly bolted.
Right. I think it's already finished at that point. But something that's not finished, guys, we have 6,000 people in the chat right now. So please, if you would like to smash the like button on this, guys. 6,000 of you who are, wherever you are in the world, right, all across the world, please like this. Also, please head over to Jahan's. All of his information is in the description. I will show all of it at the end so you guys see it. I'll show it to you at the end. But guys, make sure you click on that. It's in the description. So follow him, like him. He's on TikTok, Instagram, everywhere else.
Yeah, if you guys can follow my YouTube channel, because I'm trying to get to 1,000 so I can do what.
Guys, let's get him to 1,000, please. No, we can get you. No, we will get you to 1,000 this stream. Don't you worry, guys. Go over to YouTube, get him up. We need good attorneys all over the world, right? I'm sorry, but us American attorneys cannot be dominating YouTube. We need some people who are not American. Sorry to say, but listen, it's good to get that perspective, because like I said, this case is not something that was just digested in the United States. I think a lot of times we focus, especially as American lawyers, we focus solely on the United States. But we don't realize a lot of people are watching this around the world. They watch American trials around the world, and they look to this trial, and they were looking to this outcome and waiting for this verdict. I mean, with bated breath. Some people like yourself were probably staying up all hours of the night to watch these things, to listen to these things. When I was in Korea, I would stay up literally all night to do trial streams, sleep a couple hours during the day, and then do it all over again. I mean,
sounds
insane.
like you and I had it sounds like our sleep schedules sync. That's exactly right. I would get up, I would watch all night, sleep for maybe 4 hours, get up, do some exercise, eat something, try to pump out 4 or 5 billable hours instead of my usual 8 or 9, and then watch it all over again.
Yep. And that was my pattern too. That's literally the exact same thing I'm doing, because I also still practice, and I also would try to do 4 to 6 hours just to maintain, right? I'm not like growing. I'm just, okay, let me not piss off my clients here, That's the level I was at. But the verdict, right? We got the verdict yesterday. Now, I know there was a little bit of a tease. That was a little bit of a tease when they came and said, hey, you didn't fill this out right. It did tip the hand that there was a recovery there, right? Because they said you didn't fill out damages, which implied that they had found that at least one of the counts for one of the sides, there were damages. So we knew there was something. We knew it wasn't a nothing burger. We knew it wasn't just going to be a blank for both sides. But we got the verdict. What did you think when you heard the verdict? Were you shocked? Were you surprised? How did you feel about that?
So look, I must say that my reading of all of the legislation, and of course I'm not an American lawyer, I'm not American trained, but as a common law system, you can kind of read your cases and understand the vibe. And my understanding of freedom of speech laws in the US is that they are so sacred, so protected, so well encapsulated that the reality is that it's very hard to get over the line. And what I saw, though, was such an upswelling of public support that I realized that jurors, even though they're sequestered, they don't live in a bubble. And if you leave the courtroom and you hear Johnny Depp, Depp, Johnny Depp, there's like this, that has to have an impact on you, right? And even if you're sequestering yourself, you have family, you have this, you have that, and even if you tell them, shut up, I don't want to hear about it, there's going to be this energy that's being pumped at you. Add that to the fact that Johnny's team did such a phenomenal case. I mean, they really had a heavy burden, and they discharged it case by case, day by day, hour by hour, getting us to the line. And so that was what really blew my mind. It was one of the coolest things I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think in terms of free speech, first of all, obviously there's always exceptions, right? The defamation is a well-known exception, right? You have free speech, but not free speech to defame people. Also, to call for imminent violent action, that's another one that you can't do. So we Americans understand, yes, free speech is sacred, but there are some guidelines. It's not absolute right? It's not an absolute right to free speech. So there's something that's been established, and I think that's something that Americans do accept. However, I will say you are spot on about hearing Johnny Depp. And another thing is, despite the sequestering and despite being told not to do it, whenever you open your phone and you go just open it, and if you have a news scroll, it was the top item. So how are you not going to see something? If you open social media, and by the way, this jury was very young. A lot of them were in their 20s. There's no way they weren't checking social media. They weren't prohibited from using social media. They were just prohibited from searching about the case. But if you open Twitter, you see #AmberTurd is the #1 tweet. I mean, it's going to affect you, right? Regardless of how, it's going to affect you.
I imagine that'll be one of the appeal points. I mean, I imagine that's. I think so. Okay. And look, I actually think that there's nothing that the judge could have done to prevented that, because it's unreasonable to expect people not to consume any media whatsoever in 2022. It's just not reasonable.
I 100% agree with you. My Australian viewers, they sent me one of these. It's from abc.net.au. So this is an Australian article. But you see right here, Johnny Depp's legal battle with Amber Heard could have a long way to run yet, with an appeal almost inevitable. There's also reports from that she's already started to appeal it. So yeah, let's just jump in. So in appeal, is this process similar in Australia, where you have an appellate court and a higher level court?
Yeah. So what happens is we have the court of first instance where the court where the determination is made, and then you have appellate courts that determine points of law and points of law only. And that is if a mistake was made in the process. So we don't ever re-adjudicate the facts. The facts are whatever happened at trial. There is some exceptions to this in certain jurisdictions, like the family jurisdiction, the criminal jurisdiction. We have these things called House and King errors. I won't bore your audience with them, but fundamentally, appeals are creatures of statute, and they deal with only the questions of law. One of the questions of law might be that the judge failed to misdirect people to not access social media at all. That's a potential error of law. Or the judge failing to allow this question created a potential injustice.
Yes, and that's the important thing. I think that's very similar. It's focused on the law. So the lower court is the same as the United States, it seems like, in Australia. Lower court is the fact finder, and the appellate court is more focused on the law and the legal issues, potential legal issues. So, I mean, making this point here in the article, this seems to be accurate, could only interfere if a verdict, if they find the decisions by the judge seriously undermine the jury verdict. There are some things that the jury could have done that might also impact it that could be appealable issues. But one point here is the ability to adjust financial damages. So what did you think about the financial aspect, about the numbers behind this verdict? Because, I mean, I guess they seem large, but we also got to remember that those punitive damages, which were awarded for $5 million, are capped at $350,000. You can thank Exxon Valdez for that. When these companies were sued and there was trillions in punitive damages, they appealed that, and tort reform through most of the states has capped punitive damages at a very low level, honestly.
Now you've taught me something. I had no idea. That's really helpful.
Exxon Valdez, yes.
Look, the numbers seem, it's hard because you're a juror. I mean, we don't know anything. I think in America, you guys can ask jurors some questions about their, education.
Voir dire, yeah, that's what we do.
We're not allowed to voir dire our witnesses on anything.
On anything?
No, we don't have Batson violations either.
So if they're extremely biased, if they just are like,
we have to eye them up. We get 3 challenges. We don't get challenges we don't get unlimited challenges. We eye them up.
Wow.
Yeah, we don't have Batson violations. We don't have striking for cause. We have 3 in my state. In the state up north, we have 7. And yeah, you just have to eye them up.
That must be an art. That must be an art.
Yeah, it is. I would say it takes about 60 jury trials before you feel like you know what you're doing, and even then you get it wrong. Then you can't pick it. So we don't get to voir dire any questions around the judge gets to voir dire them for suitability for the jury, but we don't get to ask any questions.
So for suitability of the jury, were they able to ask questions like, are you able to, consider both sides fairly? Okay. So they get some basic, egregious bias out of the way. Okay. Yes. So that's at least that's a little bit better. All right. I feel a little bit better, but the lack of voir dire, I mean, you say that an American attorney's like, whoa, what's going on? But okay,
it's fundamental to your system. You guys you guys will spend hours on jury selection. For us at jury selection, they show up, they go and stand in the box, they get pulled out of a hat. When you look at them, you say, is this the person I'm going to use one of my challenges on? That's the question you got to ask yourself.
Yeah. It feels honestly, I like that. I mean, I can see the benefits of that system. I do feel like in certain circumstances, the case is already over after the voir dire because you've kind of, selected your jury so tightly. But it's an interesting process. But for the appeal, could you see the case? Do you see any issues, whether they're of law or maybe the numbers, anything else that you would say that stand out to you, saying, maybe that's an appealable issue?
So I don't know if it's. We don't do this in Australia, but I have some colleagues who run in big law in the US. And apparently it's not uncommon for any major litigation to have the appellate team just chilling in the back, making lists as the case goes on, just in case you end up in the situation you're in. I imagine something like that occurred in this case and said, okay, well, Judge Ascanate, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing her name, her honor's name. But I'm sure that day 4, she sustained an objection, shouldn't have been let in, and the person's been making a detailed list so that you can file your appeal straight away. I know that that's done in big law in the US in certain states in certain contexts. I imagine that's the situation we're in. Here in Australia, in the Antipodes, we're kind of we wait to lose and then we check for our appeal grounds. But One thing that jumped out at me is the direction, a failure to not direct the jury to use social media is potentially an error of law. I don't know if that would fall under error of law or under error of fact. And I imagine that there's probably, having read some of the bench book and looked at some of the materials, that's within the judge's discretion to make that call.
Right.
So I don't know.
The judge does have a lot of discretion. So I think that, I mean, that's one thing that perhaps is a little surprising. But one thing that I did notice is that towards the end, especially towards the end of the trial, the judge started ruling a little bit more for Amber. And I think that was because she was anticipating a potential appeal and she was trying to protect this from appeal. Because no judge, I don't know how it is in Australia, but in America, no judge likes to be appealed.
Exactly the same. They despise it. They hate it. They hate it. They live
high on their face. It is the worst.
Absolutely. And we in Australia, in America, if I'm not mistaken, judges are elected officials, right?
Yes, many of them are. Yes, some of them are appointed, but many of them are elected.
Yeah, we don't have that. We only have appointed judges. We say that it breaches the separation of powers doctrine to elect a judge.
Yeah, they're members of the. Yeah, I see that argument, and certainly I in many cases do agree with that, right? Because there's definitely some issues in the United States with certain judges that are appointed, but this particular judge, I didn't do her background whether she was appointed or elected, but regardless, it seems like she was well qualified. It doesn't seem like she was an unqualified judge. It seemed like she had a background. She had a very good knowledge of the law. In fact, I think on one of those motions, she could have even ruled in Johnny Depp's favor, but she didn't. That was particularly the one about the closings. And the statements in the closings that were calling for when Rottenborn, counsel for Amber Heard, stepped up and said, you need to make this decision for every victim of domestic violence. Is that permissible in Australia? Can you call for
that'd be a mistrial? That'd be a mistrial. That'd be
right
a
away,
mistrial.
right?
That would be immediately a mistrial. I would call for mistrial immediately, because how can you remedy that injustice, and how can you remedy that direction to the jury? I might not be successful in my mistrial, but I think that it's that egregious. And I want to be very clear, that judge did a phenomenal job with a difficult case, and two incredibly well-known litigators. So it was amazing. I don't think anyone else could have done a job nearly as good.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that judge was fantastic. Well, I'm going to catch a couple of these chats. Some of them had some questions. Then we're going to jump into the Australia perjury situation, which is exactly what I wanted to jump into with you. So Katarina said, hi, Jahan. Question. There's a lot of speculation about the dog situation, and Barnaby got angry. Is there anything there? I think we're going to talk about that when we talk about perjury. I don't know if you want to. So
I'm happy to discuss that now or later on. But Katarina, we will cover your question for sure.
Yes, nice. We'll cover this question, Katarina. So we're going to get to it. That was just the order that they were received. Amber texting, hey, babe, can I borrow $8 million? Elon, new phone, who dis? My chat is pretty savage. I'll get some that I can't see right here. I'll just read them from the list I have. Claudia says, Amber Heard played out Dr. Curry's diagnosis to a T. All that terrible acting was exactly what the doctor described. Yeah, I thought that lined up, right? Dr. Curry was essentially describing them straight up to a point, I think. Describing Amber, rather.
I couldn't agree more. I think what was profoundly bizarre to watch is you've seen Dr. Curry explain how cluster B diagnosis works. You've seen her say what the indicia are, and then you go and do the exact thing that she said you would do. Why would you not? And that's the part of me that makes me believe that Amber genuinely believes her version of reality so firmly that she's, I think, disconnected from the way she's perceived by others.
Yeah, and she doesn't understand how she's coming off. She really doesn't. I mean, she doesn't get that it's really off-putting. It's really disenfranchising. It's something that is putting the jury further and further away from her. The believability is the key here, right? And she can't just say whatever and be believed. This is not a context in which she can do that. It's often, I say especially for people in Hollywood, and this goes for men and women, right? A lot of times they get the pretty privilege, the status privilege, right? Their attractiveness, their status as actors, their celebrity status, people wanting to get their attention are just willing to be yes men. That testimony about everybody around Johnny just says yes and enables him. I thought that was beautiful projection for Amber and her cadre of followers.
100%. I think the thing that really for me swayed me on Johnny Depp is he accepted that he's an addict. He accepted he had problems with his emotional range. He accepted all sorts of mental health problems. He said, despite all that, I'm not a violent person. And I've always said extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. One of the things I think is so important we talk about is we always should believe people when they come forward and say, I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I'm in danger. We need to believe people. We need to give them the benefit of the doubt. That's the human in me talking, not the criminal defense lawyer. But we need to give them the benefit of the doubt. And the problem is that Miss Heard has alleged that she is the poster child for this, and she's not. She's simply not. She's not believed. She very well may have endured something, and if she did, it's tragic and unfair that the testimony and the verdict went against her. But extraordinary claims, of which she made several, require extraordinary evidence, and quite frankly, I find it offensive to my sensibilities that she would equate herself with people who are genuine survivors,
yes,
and whose stories absolutely deserve to be told, because lying about this cheapens it for everyone.
And Jahan, that is the number one group that has reached out to me during this case, and to me, that's what really broke my heart on this and got me into this. I'm not a celebrity chaser. I've never been a Hollywood gossip type person. That's not my channel. I've been focused on the truth. But the truth is that there are real victims out there, and real victims reached out to me with their stories, with their pictures. Like, I mean, I had people sending me, Jahan, pictures saying, this is me and my black eye and how it healed over 4 weeks. Look at Amber. Look at how she's running around saying that this is what happened to her. You know, it's disgusting. It's abominable. And I'm so glad that these people saw justice in this case, because they saw themselves in their situation in this case. And by Amber Heard being shut down as a false report, I think that was a benefit to real victims everywhere. And it shows that we need to support real victims, right? Investigate. My line is investigate all crimes, right? Any crime, any gender needs to be investigated to the full rigor. Now, I take away the phrase believe, right? Because believe has all sorts of implications. Believe is, problematic because in the United States, we have the presumption of innocence, innocent until proven guilty. I'm sure it's the same in Australia,
It is.
Right? And I believe in that fundamentally being so important. I think it's at the core of our legal profession.
I agree. You have the presumption of innocence. You have the golden rule. You have all of these. I mean, and as part of the mandate of our firm, I spend a fair bit of my time acting on behalf of women's domestic violence organizations. I represent women of all colors, creeds, and that includes transgender women who are the subject of violence and issues. And I think that it would be naive to say that it's not an overwhelming issue with male on female violence. But does that mean that female on male violence or female on female violence doesn't happen? Of course not. And this belief structure that it's only one way is toxic and incorrect.
Right. And it cannot happen, right? The belief that it cannot happen, that's impossible to happen, right? And also that certain different behaviors, right? So, if it's a male on female violence, that may take a different form than the type of abuse where it's female on male violence, that or domestic abuse, right? That may take a different form. It may be in the form of control, right? It may be in the form of verbal abuse. It may be in the form of emasculation, which we saw happen on a lot of those tapes. By the way, Jahan, I want to stop you right here. I know we're very serious. We're having a great conversation, but I just want to show you something. This is your channel right here, guys. This is Jahan Kalatar. He has 1,001K subs. And guess what? He's just about to get 1K more because I'm hitting subscribe right here. So there you go, guys. Thank you so much for helping us get him to 1K subs. We really
Legal mindset
and the did this easily. So,
and to your gentlemen, thank you. I promise I will make content. It will not be as good as my friend. He is killing it, but I will be making some content. And I've been waiting to be able to go live. So this is awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
And no, it's awesome. And I'm so glad you're getting the subscribers and ability to go live. And, you're an accomplished speaker too. So actually talking about how to become more articulate, I think this is a great video here for you guys to watch. The fact it's only got 19 views is criminal. So go over here, give some of his videos a view. And obviously, if you're in Australia, I think a lot of the content on becoming an attorney, I think that's critical because it's such a difficult process and people need guidance through that process. And I know this case has caused a lot of people to be interested in going to law school.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a hard path, but if you're going to do it right. That's what I say.
I sometimes look at, I found the process of law school to be incredibly difficult. And I found the process of being a junior associate to be incredibly difficult. And it's only now at partner level where I find that it's firstly, it's the hardest job I've ever had. It's incredibly stressful. The highs don't feel as good as the lows hurt, but my gosh, I couldn't imagine doing anything else. And the feeling after a trial and you get the verdict that you're after, it's just I you couldn't describe it to anyone. It's indescribable. It really is.
Yeah, it's an absolutely great feeling because you feel that win for your client. Let me get back. I've got 5 more chats. Let me go right here. Daniel says, straight up, put on the cowboy hat. Oh man, I will not right now put on that cowboy hat I have back there, but I do appreciate you noticing it. What's up, Daniel? Appreciate it. Appreciate it as always. You make me crack up every single time. Jay says, is there any way we will actually know whether she ends up paying? I feel invested in this till the end. Well, if she appeals, right? She's not gonna pay before the appeal, so she's gonna try to challenge it. Amber is not trying to.
She has to put money in escrow before she can file.
Yes.
So it's time to put up or shut up, to use the vernacular.
Yes, that is very true. That is a very good point. So she does have to have some money in escrow in order to be able to appeal. So that is true. She's going to have to. Now, whether she ultimately ends up paying is a whole separate issue, right? She could end up declaring bankruptcy. That's something people floated, and that's always an option, right? If you're, in deep in the United States, I mean, Chapter 7 is always there for you. So it's an option, and many people have used it, right? All across of all spectrums. Tanya says, with Australian $2, says, please have Jahan on again. He's fantastic. I do plan, I love to have collaborators in different jurisdictions, particularly because I don't know Australian law. I remember I got into the highly controversial Djokovic, situation with COVID and getting him. I mean, and that one, people were telling me I was kind of getting some facts wrong. And I'm like, look, I'm not an Australian lawyer. I'm just seeing what I see from the outside. I'm just reading the documents. But it's good to have somebody who's inside and knows the process, especially who practices and has a firm. That is really key. Zach said, did you see Trump's Facebook post? No, I don't even own Facebook, guys. I got rid of Facebook a long time ago. I just think the ads are to me, the ads are not worth it. And also, as a content creator, Facebook is not a great place to post your content, but that's my personal opinion. It's also not my demographic tends to not be in the upper 80s. So I don't market through Facebook. Johnny Arbor says, it's funny how Amber Heard attacked the manliest role, 21 Jump Street, during that evil rant. Yes, Jahan, I believe that the audio where, and by the way, Jahan, my channel, I say whatever the hell I want to say. So, the audio where she was like, suck my dick, that audio that sounded demonic, as many people were deeply disturbed by that audio. So yeah. I think hearing stuff like the way she attacked him really rubbed people in the wrong way. And I think for some people who've been in that situation, it was definitely triggering for them.
It is one of the most, because I've acted, I mean, I can draw some parallels from some of my own clientele. It is, people don't recognize how terrifying it is for a man to be in a relationship with someone who threatens to take their children or hurt themselves or hurt them or lie about what's occurred to them. You feel trapped. You feel anxious. You become hypervigilant. I mean, I've got clients with PTSD because they're in a relationship with someone like Miss Heard, who makes up stories, who attacks them. They go home and the simplest things trigger her and she behaves in this despicable, reprehensible way. I've got a poor client at the moment. His ex-wife will call him 167 times a day, send him hundreds of messages. She's made all sorts of allegations about him. He's 3 times her size, but he's terrified. He can't sleep. He can't eat. He's losing weight. It is a scary place to be. And so that message, I think, showed the world who she can be behind the mask. And over the 7 weeks we saw her, dressing like Johnny Depp, showing up to court what the person before was wearing, changing your hairstyle, saying weird things, behaving in weird ways. We just saw that the facade was never as put together as it had been when Hollywood was sort of shining it up. So that was a fascinating thing.
Yeah, these guys, sorry, but my chat, John, you're absolutely right there. You're 100% together. My problem is I monitor my chat, and this is something you'll learn as a streamer, and the chat will intentionally say stuff to make me laugh. and, which is the problem. Jahan, is that you? I see giving a TEDx talk. Here's some authentic shekels. You've given TED talks, right? At least one, right?
I had the privilege of speaking at 10. Hi, Adam. Yes, that is my TED Talk. Please check it out. I think it's pretty good. Like it if you can. Make comments. It pushes it up the algorithm. I gave a TEDx talk in 2018 about the art of saying sorry. So it was funny. Ted did a big call out and said, do you have a story worth telling? And I was like, I'm not really good at anything except saying sorry for heinous offenses. So I made a video about like the art of saying sorry, and it got picked up. I went to a pitch night, and then I was successful, and I spoke on the main stage in 2018, I think, and I got 6,000 people saw it, and it was one of the coolest things I've ever done.
Yeah. It's a funny comment here. The Shyster lawyer lies. I have it on good authority that Australia does not exist from the mouth of Pope Brackets. This is once again, this is some internet stuff, Jahan.
Objection hearsay.
Apparently if you Google like, does Australia exist, it doesn't correct you. Like, so because it doesn't correct you, like, and say like, yes, it does exist. People are like, no, it doesn't exist according to Google. So by the way, this is the Brit. You can see it's the Brits here by the pounds, right? So it's the Brits. It's the Brits that are pushing this. I'm not saying it's a conspiracy, but I'm saying it's a conspiracy. Pastor Flash asks how much for me to put on the cowboy hat. You don't have enough in your bank account right now, Pastor Flash. But Nate says, as an Aussie, I am learning a lot from Jahan. Can she just pledge money into? No, it's real money, not pledge money, right? And are there ramifications for all her lies told in court? So I'll take it from the U.S. side. So on the U.S. side, it is very difficult to hit somebody with perjury for their testimony that was in court, right? That's very difficult, particularly if they were a party to the lawsuit. It's kind of viewed that, okay, that lawsuit meted out justice. So the justice was through that judicial process. It is very rare to hit them and to get it to stick with perjury. And frankly, if they were bringing up perjury for every court case where somebody lied, the court would be inundated. It would be flooded with perjury charges. It's not possible to go after everybody for specifically lying. So it's got to be something that is egregious, that is very big, and that is very criminal, typically in the United States. Now, but this is a good transition. The Australia perjury case. Can you kind of get in, what are they going after her specifically for in Australia? What are they concerned about there?
Okay, so let's take a step back and go back in time to when Johnny and Amber were happy together. They came to Australia and they bought. So Australia, because of our distance from the rest of the world, has really extreme biosecurity and quarantine laws. They bought 2 dogs, Pistol and Boo, which I don't think were vaccinated, or they had some rule that they couldn't bring them, and they bought them and they lied on a form, or they miswrote on a form. Because of that, they were penalized. They went through the legal system and they were found to have committed creating a false instrument, I think it was, and I think they weren't convicted. They were given some other penalty. The case was discharged. Now, under Australian law, we don't have statutes of limitations on any serious criminal offending. It's not like America. So it can be anything. Drug supply can be prosecuted 60 years later. So there's this myth going around that Australia, because she committed perjury in relation to that, she may be, reviewed and the case is still open. Now that may very well be the case, but for the purposes of the record, they've done the crime, they've been sentenced, it's over. Of course, the prosecution has the authority to bring further charges, but it's extremely unlikely.
Can they look at the American system and what was said in the American courts, and is that admissible? Because that was a big issue in the U.S. was, hey, how much of this UK case, which, by the way, let me just make it very clear, because it's something that everybody will say, especially the Amber fans. They'll say, well, Amber was innocent in the UK. She wasn't a party. She's not British. She couldn't be made a party in the UK. She testified. It was about her statements, yes, but it was at the Sun. So to what extent could you bring in Amber's comments and put those into, from the U.S. court, from the trial we had right now, and bring those in and say, hey, based on what she said here, we might want to come back and review?
Well, look, I don't have a quick answer for you because that's a super complicated question, but I think that with evidence law in Australia, I don't know how it is in the US. I'm sure it's followed similar rules. It's an exclusionary exercise. So how do we make sure we get relevant evidence in there that's not hearsay, that's not obtained illegally? I can tell you that we can absolutely get evidence of a foreign judgment and utilize that in Australia for some sort of, enforcement action. But beyond that, I don't know to what extent it can be relied upon. I think that this whole perjury in Australia thing has been blown a little bit out of proportion. I might be wrong, but I don't think it's going to be followed up in any meaningful way.
So it's you're saying it's possible, right? But not
Unlikely,
probable is your okay, got it. Now I think that the take that I got from the UK was that in the UK it really hinges on how the US court case came out. So whether or not she perjured herself, particularly with the pledge versus donate stuff, right? That was material to that case, very material to that case. That might come back. I was a little interested because Australia, it was a different case, right? It's about pistol and boo. It's really not about what's going on in the United States or in the UK. It's kind of separate to that, except for the fact that the dogs were brought in the case regarding the Amber Turd situation. That's it.
Honestly, I think that's when 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 you get that nickname, it's over for you. You know what I mean?
Well,
like you're not coming back from that.
Here's the thing, too, Jahan. I was shocked that their attorneys, that Elaine Bredehoff, spent the most time of anybody, more than Johnny's attorneys, was the one that focused on that issue. And she could have just moved on and just not made it an issue. Johnny's team didn't make it an issue by and large. They asked Johnny about it, but just once again, it was not made as big of an issue as Elaine, just who made this thing into a much larger thing. Frankly, that struck me when I was listening to it, but I just wanted to think about your
I recall because I was quite bleary. I was watching it really early in the hours of the day, and I was taking my little notes on my notepad, and I remember, I think I underlined, why Amber lawyer turd ? And I remember because it was a very strange behavior,
right,
for her counsel to do. I could understand if Johnny pontificated upon it and his team hammered it, because I think fundamentally, and I stand by this even though he won, this was a public relations strategy disguised as a lawsuit. He had no intention of winning going into it. Of that, I believe I'm adamant of that. The fact that he did showcases how well the public relations strategy went.
Yeah. Ross asked this question with Australian 10, which says, at the moment, Johnny Depp is legally a wife beater from the Sun verdict and a beaten man in the Virginia verdict. Does he have a chance now to appeal the Sun one mutually exclusive? Well, my understanding is in the UK, and this is, talking to, UK folks who know what they're talking about, is that it has been appealed already. The Sun decision was appealed, right? And he lost that appeal. So the chances to bring that back are pretty limited. In the US, for example, it would require new evidence or something else to come out. Now, could there be evidence from the Virginia case? Perhaps, but I think it's going to be a hard fight to try to relitigate that one. And whether Johnny even wants to do that, whether that's even worth it at this point, now that he's got a W, that I think from a broader perspective, because as a lawyer, you think about courtroom and then you've got out of courtroom. And in terms of out of courtroom, Johnny is sitting high. Why go and fight something where you're probably going to take an L? Walk away with a W, and I mean, I think he's good. But Jahan, do you have any different take on that, or?
You're absolutely right. So we call it it's called estoppel. And estoppel is when you cannot pursue something because the issue's been litigated and it's done. And so he had an appeal, he lost. That case is done forever until the end of time. The Sun was not defamatory in calling him a wife beater. Remember, though, that was a case against a tabloid. The tabloids have extraordinary power in the UK. And so he will not bother with that, because he goes, in the real court where the real evidence was held, which is Virginia, why would I ever go back to that kangaroo court? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Why would he ever go back to that kangaroo court? Of course. I mean, I think the real kangaroo court's got to be in Australia, right? I mean, come on. I had to make that joke. Come on. You set me up for that. Jahan, you're on the internet. You can't do these things.
I passed it to you. Yeah. You sunk it in.
By the way, shout out to my fellow internet lawyer, grifter, Nate the lawyer. Good to see you here, Nate. Nate is a good friend of mine. I did a collaboration last night, so he's giving me thanks for that. And congratulations on everybody's success. And Jahan, congratulations on your success. You've been wildly successful on TikTok. Welcome to YouTube. Welcome to the YouTube law world. Sometimes referred to as LawTube, whether in a nice way or in a disdain way. We'll talk about that in a second because I want to get your take on this, but let me get this comment. Court cases should be televised from now on. I feel like I can't believe anything I read anymore. I need to see it. See, this is a sentiment, Jahan, which I have been getting throughout the trial and all the other lawyers on YouTube. And by the way, we're lawyers of all different political backgrounds and beliefs. We have different, fundamental core beliefs. We normally cover different topics, but we've come together on this to cover this. And one thing that we've seen is the mainstream media, particularly the legacy media, whether it's the Murdoch-owned media or whatever, whoever owns the media, whoever owns it, right? It doesn't matter really. They have not taken kindly to small creators like yourself, just picking up your camera in your law office and clicking it on. They put millions of dollars into advertising revenue. And Jahan, you're picking up your phone, going on TikTok and getting millions of views. What do you see for the future of covering court cases and how this is going to develop going forward into the 21st century?
It's such a good point. And, I'm perpetually, I used to think that people didn't care about the law. And I used to have this chip on my shoulder about that. And now I realize it's actually not that at all. I think that as lawyers, we have a duty to inform the general public of how the system works, and that a lot of people just aren't civically educated. And so when I started making TikToks, and I talked about Djokovic was a big one, but one of the first things I remember is when Carl Rittenhausen's decision was being done. And whatever I feel about that gentleman and whatever I feel about the verdict, I remember watching 3 different lawyers talking about it. And then
do you remember who you were watching?
I don't. Maybe it was you.
It might have been, because I was saying that's when I really got big and I was covering it. That's how my channel kind of exploded, was through that case and through, by the way, the media saying some things and then the lawyers saying another. For example, the charges they were saying weren't even correct. They were talking about bringing a gun across state lines, and we're pulling our hair out like that's not even a charge. It was just blowing my mind. It's like, how can you lie this much? Like, how can you openly lie and just pass it off as truth? It was an explosion, and that's also when this started to explode. And I think this is just the culmination of what's been building up. But yeah, continue.
No, I think it was you, Andrew, actually, and I'm grateful because I was watching it and I remember that there was a comment made by. I saw him, I lifted my gun towards him, or I lifted my hand, and then everyone goes, directed verdict.
That was big. That's the one that went viral. I was like, that's it. It's over. That's it. That's done.
Yeah. And I remember thinking, cool. And then I Googled directed verdict because, what does that mean in your jurisdiction? And it just opened the world of knowledge for me. Yep. Instead of having what is basically a pretty talking head who doesn't understand any of the subject matter, I can now go to a subject matter expert and ask them. And that's the power of social media. I'm on Doc Talk on TikTok, and a doctor will be saying something articulate about, hey, the reason sugar is not that bad is because of this, and then you can jump on their live and ask them, hey, how does this particular mechanism work? And if they know what they're talking about, I mean, as an expert, you love it when someone asks you a technical question because you can show that you know what you're talking about. But I think in perhaps the mainstream or old media, they hate that. They freak out because they're not a subject matter expert. I'm not talking about anything but the law. I love the law. I've dedicated a large portion of my short life to it, and I intend to continue to follow it for the rest of what I have. I do it for fun, and I do it for work. I'm very lucky. I think we're in the same kind of camp of that. Yeah. So I'm not going to talk about other things. I don't know about computers. I don't know about science, but I know about this. And so that's something I'm really passionate about. And bringing that education in a meaningful, simplified way is a cool thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I consider myself, for example, I am not as criminal. I'm not a criminal attorney, right? Now that I'm a family law attorney. But one of the cool things I think about YouTube and the internet and having these sort of conversations is, I'm not an Australian attorney. So I bring on an Australian attorney and we have a conversation. And because I have a baseline of knowledge, I know good questions to ask. I know where to go with it. But you're bringing together a network of subject matter experts. And together, you're figuring this out together. We're problem solving it together. And the internet, by the way, these guys out here in the chats who are messaging me on TikTok, on Twitter, on Instagram, everywhere, they're sending me information. They're doing their own homework. They're little internet sleuths, right? Sending me information, and we're examining it real time. This is something that the legacy media just cannot do, and they're not doing it.
I agree.
at all.
Every single day I get messages on TikTok or like I'll be on a live and someone will say, hey, did you hear about this situation? I'll be like, I don't know about that. Can you tag me in it? And then boom, they tag you in it. You go in. Oh, cool. I didn't know about that. And you start to follow these rabbit holes. And, one of the things that I'm always concerned about is you don't want to like put yourself out there and say things that aren't correct. But the good thing about doing things in real time is if you get it wrong, you just jump in there, you make a comment, or you delete the post. You go in there, you say mea culpa. I've never seen the legacy media say mea culpa when they get something horrifically wrong that embarrassed. I've never seen it. I don't see it. It doesn't happen. It's like, oh, why can you hold us accountable for what we said?
In fact, I think on this, and I've already kind of seen it happening. There's a little bit of there's some legacy, some media has switched narratives, right? They've switched from Amber to Johnny, right? They've had to, I think. But there's certain other media, and I call them out specifically on my channel. I read articles from Vox, Vogue, and Vice, the V's, I say. Vice did a particular double down where they've, essentially came out and said this is a decision for an abuser, right? That Johnny Depp is an abuser, and we're going to double down and we're going to state that, the justice was misserved here. Which for me is a bold statement after a jury verdict, right? So you've got a jury verdict, you're an American, publication, and you're going to come and double down. It's a bold move on their part, but it's very interesting that they feel ideologically committed to that rather than just reporting what is the truth, which is Johnny Depp recovered and the jury found him credible and his story credible.
I think that's insanity. I mean, I actually find that offensive. You don't have to agree with verdicts, but respect the jury system, respect the political system. And, as a practicing attorney, I don't always agree with the law, but it's the law and I respect it. So as a journalistic member of the Fourth Estate, how dare you say that these jurors who followed all of the rules and know the situation far better than you do have not done their duty correctly? I think that's offensive.
Yes. And guys, I'm flipping through the super chats when there's one that's relevant because we're going to try to keep this tight on time. I'm trying to ask him the relevant ones. But yes, I have seen the picture. Have you seen one of Jason Momoa? These videos. I mean, what do you think about the memes on this? Because the memes on this have been just out of control, right? I mean, this is just
so spicy, man. Like I am probably honestly, that's what blew me away. For me, it's actually, I find it, I'm blown away by the creativity of people on the internet, like the people who are singing sea shanties with Johnny Depp. For me and you, all we are asked to do is apply the lens of the law to a situation in real time. So, for example, what will happen is the judge will make a ruling and I will explain it because I understand what rulings are. It's almost like I can translate one language to another. But these people are making memes or drawing cartoons, and it's just it's so powerful to have this system that everything's connected and just human and it's communication on communication on communication. I love it. I think it's the future.
Yeah. Jason says, I'm hearing some people say that the jury believes Amber was abused because she won the $2 million on Johnny's lawyer's comments, which proves her article to be true, that you can't write about powerful men and the bad things they do. So I guess could the view be that her counterclaim gives some credence to the fact that she was abused? So do you think that is a kind of a line of reasoning that is rational coming out of this?
I think it's a Pyrrhic line of reasoning. It's rational and it's valid. It's incorrect, but it's rational and valid.
Oh, let me bring this one up. This is a good one from Becknick, and this brings up something that I wanted to ask you about, which I forgot about. Thank you for reminding me, Becknick. You guys in the chat remember more than I do. So Barnaby Joyce will not let it slide with Amber Heard. Perjury or glassing. He'll get her one way or another, especially after she named her dog after him. So let me ask you about this. This is something that everyone says, you got to look it up. It's in Australia, glassing. I have never heard of glassing. I don't even know what it is. Can you give, especially those Americans, we have no clue what a glassing is. Can you tell us, what is it? What is it? What are the punishments for it? And can Amber Heard get stuck with glassing?
Okay, so be grateful you don't know about it. Unfortunately, in Australia, and as a criminal defense lawyer, I get it all the time. It is not uncommon that when someone is drunk or when someone gets aggravated, they throw a glass at someone or they hit someone with a glass. Now, glassing per se is not a specific offense under the Crimes Act, but it is an aggravating factor in common assault occasionally actual bodily harm, and grievous bodily harm. And so the reason everyone's going glassing, because it's a serious indictable offense, which means it can be dealt with on indictment, i.e. written down. It can be bought forever. And so Amber potentially can always be charged with a glassing offense given what she did to Johnny, even though it's 9 years out of date because we don't have statutes of limitation.
So that you guys, wait, hold on. Did I mishear that? Did you just say you do not have statutes of limitation?
On serious criminal offending, we have no statutes of limitation at all.
So, and then that is a serious criminal offense.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Okay. That's very interesting because now we're seeing this. For example, the question is asked in a lot of these cases because sexual abuse, right? Some of the sexual abuse cases we're seeing, especially with political figures in the United States, you get people from the woodwork that are 40 years ago, 50 years ago, and they're coming out and saying, hey, this person abused me. We're going, we have statute of limitations. Like there's a point at which you should have brought these charges, right? Yeah. So, but I do get the point, right? If it's something like, let's say murder, right? I can get the point why, hey, we're going to want to bring this case.
I think with statutes of limitations, I take the view that the US actually does it better. I think it's offensive that somebody makes an allegation 50 years later and you are not in a position to defend yourself. How can you possibly remember any of the circumstances that occurred then? It's unfair and it's unjust. And I think it's something that needs to be modified. I actually think you guys have that more in your corner. And I think you guys don't have a statute of limitations on murder, if I'm not mistaken. Everything else you do.
Yeah. But that's specific, right? That's very specific. Yeah. And I'm behind that. That makes sense.
Yeah,
like that definitely makes sense. Like you should not be able to murder somebody and get away with that. I get that.
If you sold some pot in the 70s and you're like 80 years old now,
right,
you can still be charged. It's insane.
Right. It's crazy. There's two funny comments about for you here, Jahan. One is that you apparently look like Shia LaBeouf.
I hear that all the time.
Welcome to the internet. They're going to find the closest thing you look like, right? Bella Stella says, question for Jahan, how large are the spiders in Australia? You were definitely going to get those.
Check out Huntsman spiders. They're big.
They're very, very big. I was in Australia right before the lockdown. I was there in January of 2020. So
wow.
Right just made it in. Crazy. This is a great one. A great from Julia with the check 100. Hey guys, do you think it's ethical that the UK judge was so close to the publisher of the article? Would something be allowed in the US/AU? So I'll speak for the US and then let Jahan take it over there. So in the United States, you are allowed to disqualify judges. Now, the weird thing is, this is super awkward, but you actually have to go to the judge that you want to remove and ask them for permission to remove them. So you have to say, hey, judge, I think you're biased. Can you remove yourself? Now, of course, if they deny that motion, you can take it through an interlocutory. You can go to a different judge and say, hey, it's sort of like a mini appeal. You go to a different judge and say, hey, I don't think he was able to answer this fairly. Can you answer this? And they could go ahead and make the decision. And by the way, judges do get replaced in the United States. Now, I've looked at the conspiracy-like web of the Sun trial. To me, it's insane. Now, if all of those allegations and connections are true, I think in the U.S. he would be much too close. But now, whether or not he'd be successfully removed, well, that's always up in the air. It's never guaranteed that a judge would be removed. However, there was a good probability in the U.S. that that judge would be removed.
Here in Australia, I can confidently say that. Firstly, I've seen that.
You've seen the graphic, right?
Yeah, I've seen that conspiracy theory, and I also think it's not based in reality whatsoever. We have a similar problem where you have to say, Your Honor, I'd ask Your Honor to recuse yourself. You have to do it in open court, and you have to say, Your Honor, I believe you have apprehended bias because, or I believe you can't deal with this effectively because, and it's humiliating and it's embarrassing, and we don't have the interlocutory step where we can then jump above them immediately. We don't have that. So another thing I'm going to steal from your system.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Wendy asked, Andrew, do you ever sleep? I went to bed and I was up last night podcasting, and I'm here streaming again. So that's what we do here, guys. That's what these cases are. And when lawyers listen, and Jahan, this is regular for even lawyers when we're not covering Johnny Depp, right? You've had a lot of long nights where you're working on cases and you just power through. This is our kind of weird mentality where we get hyper focused. We stick to a case. We're working it very hard, and we're focused on it. And oftentimes, I've had days where I've worked 14-hour days. I've barely slept. I've gone home just to sleep for 2 seconds, and then rolled over and gone right back to bed to finish it. And I've had days where I work 4 hours, or 3 hours, or 2 hours because it's a very slow day, or I'm about to go on vacation or something else. That's my lifestyle, but I don't want to put that on you if that's not accurate.
No, I think litigators all over the world have the exact same lifestyle. We do the work when and if it comes in, and we deal with crisis. It's an unpredictable trade. Sometimes I've had cases I've had cases where I've spent hundreds of hours of preparing. I've shown up on the first day, case with dismissed or withdrawn. I've had cases where the other way's gone down. So I think we're a weird beast, lawyers. We like self-flagellation.
Yeah, that's very, very true. That is very, very true. Let me get one more of these questions, and then I'm gonna let you skedaddle here. But I'll just grab it here because I see it on the side. So the Guardian in the UK are claiming an organization. I guess they're claiming misogyny and how this is a blow for women. And so Amber failed to prove her point. It's not a trial about abuse, but defamation. Okay, well, let me get the point. So what would you say to people who want to make this a trial about gender specifically, or want to make this a trial about political views? What would you, going forward, what would you say, what would you take from this forward as the message you would want to take from this trial into the future?
Toxicity in relationships is something that happens at all stratum of society, whether it's in a mansion in Beverly Hills, all the way through to people who have nothing and live in abject poverty. This is the chance for us to have a meaningful discussion about what domestic violence looks like in all of its forms, and we need to have that discussion. If you are going to point to Ms. Heard and say she is the poster child for domestic violence, I respectfully say the evidence doesn't support that. And I think that you need to really reassess what it means to be a domestic violence survivor, because a lot of people are suffering in total silence and not getting anywhere near the kudos, respect that they deserve for going through that stuff. And so this is not the poster child for that behavior. This is, I would say, two toxic people who fueled each other to do bad things, and they were better off without each other. But this is not the hill I don't think this is the hill that you should choose. Respectfully. I mean, that's my position on it.
Yeah, that's well said. I mean, look, I think that Johnny Depp clearly had substance abuse issues, but one of the things I want to take is that just because you have substance abuse issues does not mean you're an abuser. And certainly people who are trying to recover from that and trying to remove that from their life should absolutely be supported. And, you need to be very careful. My takeaway is be very careful vetting and bringing people into your life, because, whether they're friends, whether they're romantic partners, whether they're business partners, the people you bring in your life have the ability to impact you very strongly in ways that you can not even imagine, psychologically, physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever you believe in and feel. So I vet those people very carefully and let it be a lesson to people that there are people like Amber Heard out there that are predatory, and you should be on the watch for that in your life. And they exist in both men and women. And in all genders, all backgrounds, all races, all creeds around the world. Amber Heard is not an exception. There are others like her out there, and abuse is abuse and deserves to be investigated and, if found, punished harshly.
I love that, and so well said. Well said.
So let me speaking of well said here, let me go ahead and share my screen here, guys. And if I didn't get to just so you guys know, if I didn't get your super chat, guys, I got the spreadsheet. I'm going to get to those in a future stream. I may have one tonight. If not, I'll have one tomorrow morning where I will get to all of the chats. So if I missed it today, do it. But guys, we got Jahan here. Let's make sure. I want to refresh this page.
Thank you to getting me 1,000. That's amazing.
I'm sorry, Jahan. You're at 1.23K now. So you're at 1.23K. If you're not subscribed, get the subscription over here to Jahan. He's a great Sydney-based solicitor, university lecturer, and he's got fantastic graphics. He's got fantastic thumbnails. I mean, look, you judge a man by his thumbnail, right? Here's his website, Jalan Kalantar here. He's got all his information, his TED Talks on here. Looks freaking fantastic. I don't even have a website, so that's great. His Instagram is great. He has all his information here, his TikToks. And you can check that all out. So please, guys, go do that. And let's thank Jahan for coming on my show. Jay's in the chat for Jahan. Jahan, it's really been a pleasure, and I hope that in the future, if you have any American law issues, or if you just want to have a chat with a lawyer who may or may not be in Seoul, South Korea, please let me know.
That'll definitely be happening. Now that I'm accessible to having these, will you come on? Can I commit?
Absolutely. No, I will come on your channel. That's how it goes. YouTube is you come on my channel, I come on your channel. It boosts the channel all around, and we support each other on on YouTube, and we all may have different views, we may have different backgrounds, but we all come together to search for the truth. And I think that's something that, as long as I feel the other person is searching for the truth and fighting for the truth, I will always be somebody who is willing to collaborate with them.
I love it. Thank you, LordTube. Lovely to meet everybody,
thank
and thank you to Andrew for introducing me to the big. This is awesome.
Yeah, it is a great community. 9,000 of you out there. Smash that like button. Take care, guys. Stay based. Peace.